That's terrible. What the hell happened? Okay, folks, welcome back. As you can see from that introduction, about 2 hours of machining condensed into what, 5 minutes or so, whatever that was. I have the original swing arm back on the ZX10 frame. I had to make some temporary bushings because a while back a customer asked me to take out the original bearings because he was thinking about getting this powder coated black. That never happened. I have new roller, needle bearings that go to this, but they are a real bitch to press in and press out on this. And I wasn't about to scrap a brand new pair because pressing them in, probably pressing them out again, would destroy them. I know the original pair pretty much came out in pieces. So I machined some aluminum just to suffice for now to give me the exact location of the original swing arm, because I'm not convinced yet as to where I need to put the blocks on the back here for those shocks. And the shocks that are not going to be the original ones, so I'm going to use them here for a little bit of more mock-up, but the customer wants to put some Hagen shocks on, and I had a conversation with a Hagen rep, and we came up with what we think is the correct length for this modification, about 10 millimeters longer than the original shocks. And if I remember, I will explain why here as we go along. I had a really hard time in wrapping my head around the dimensions in regards to the angle of what the shocks will be on this swing arm here. And I knew I was missing something. I really couldn't put my finger on it, rather, until today. I was thinking, what I'm missing is a reference that is consistent between the two of these. And of course, between two of these is completely different, overall. But there's one thing that's going to be consistent. And I'll show you what that is here. And I also failed to make two measurements from this side. I made a reference measurement from only one side over to that face over there. It's mating face that side. I need to make measurements on both sides because I need to know if the swing arm on this original one is actually offset to the side a little bit, which I think it is. I think it favors this side a little bit. I don't believe I made that other measurement. I have to look at my notes, but we're going to make some new notes here and come up with a way to have a definitive reference as to the way the swing arm lies, because I can't go off a length because this one's longer, not entirely at least, and the rest of it is skewed too because of this box shape versus the cylindrical shape or the tubular shape back here. So let me get you moved a little bit, and I'm going to get this set up and show you what I mean. Let's refresh ourselves on the objective. The objective is, since we know this fits now, this replacement swing arm, we need to establish the angle of the dangle of the new shocks that are coming in, which are going to be, like I said, about 10 millimeters longer in reference to the longer length of this swing arm. The swing arm is obviously longer. So where do we put these? And this is the part I'm wrestling with, because it's very difficult to come up with a direct reference because of the length difference mainly. If I go to the center line of the axle and go up to a reference point, it's going to be different because I have to capture an angle this way. And I could be guessing, but I want to get a little bit closer than that. Now, I'm not necessarily going to duplicate exactly the position of that where the center line of the rear axle would be on this one as it is to there. I may go just a skosh lower, because if we're longer, it's going to be putting a little bit more force on those shocks to compress them under the same circumstances as these. If we go longer, we increase the ability of the shocks full range, dampening range. I forgot the term for that, actually. It just popped out of my head. I was thinking about it before. But the range of the shocks in regards to their full function to get a good ride out of them and not be too stiff. Because generally speaking, the closer we put them to the pivot, the stiffer and kind of springier they're going to be. And we angle them out, they're going to be a little smoother. So what I want to do is I want to get this so it's pretty close and maybe a little lower with those longer shocks. They will naturally be outwards a little bit more on the slope, and I think we achieve the whole thing. But the trouble is I can't really measure it accurately to determine where that should be, because I just don't have a frame of reference that I can use, but I actually do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to level this swing arm. I'm going to use my little level, and it's close enough, and I'm going to bring this up without the shocks hooked up, of course, and I'm going to level this. All right. Now what that's going to do is it's going to give me a parallel distance of where the shock mounts here to, say, the center of the pivot at a level position. Then I put this one in and I level this one, and I look and see where that would be if I was going to put them on this swing arm in the exact same position. Because right now I could measure this and I could get a dimension, which I have, but at an angle it's going to skew it, and this angle of this one is going to be different. So I have to have a consistent frame of reference. The only way I can do that is to just make them both level, make the measurements, and then see how they lay on the swing arm. We can use this as a guide because it's very close to what the new ones are going to be lengthwise. And then what we'll do is we'll see how that compares. The other thing I need to do again is I need to make on this swing arm here a couple more reference measurements this way, from this side to like here, for example, to that face, which we'll calculate over to the inside face of here. And then, of course, the other side, I'm going to verify that I have the right number for that. So this thing's in where it's going to be. You know, there is a slight amount of lateral thrust on this because the bolt's not tightened up. You know, what's going to happen is the frame's actually going to come into it a little bit. And that's why there's a spacer, supposed to be a spacer between here, which I do not have in right now. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just getting the alignment. I'm not going to tighten this thing up. So this, I think we can come up with a really good guesstimation of where these things really need to be by doing it with a consistent reference like that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pop these shocks off. We'll get that leveled, and then we'll take some measurements and see where it's at. It's probably not going to be a hell of a lot different than it is right now, but it's just impossible to really get a good reference because I can't compare the two angles to one another. I have to measure the angle. Really don't have a good way to do that. My angle level won't fit on here. You know, I need a much longer surface for that to go in. This is going to be as close as I can get to it. So let's give her a shot and see what happens. Alright, so I got it jacked up. I don't want to jack you up or anything, but I jacked this up. And here's my level. Now this isn't accurate, I know, because it's a round surface, but I'm just eyeing it in parallel with the actual cylindrical part of this, you know, the tubular part. And it's going to be close enough. I think it's going to be way closer than guessing. You know, that's the thing. I just don't want to really guess. I could probably guess, and I bet it wouldn't make too much of a difference. It would probably work fine. But you know what they say in math class, right? You remember math class where your teacher said, the answer's correct, but I want you to show your work. How did you get to that answer? And so I want to be able to say, this is how I got to this determination as to where the shocks go, and document that if necessary. Because in case there's a problem or something, hell, I could be wrong. I've been wrong once before, just once. I got a little drawing going on out in the other, well, got a drawing going on here. You can't see it probably. Now I'm just going to eye this in again to the center of the hole for the shock and to the center of the pivot. I got 17 3/4, right, like right on the nose. And so now what I need to do is, before I take this back out, is I need to do these side measurements again. I got to get my straight edge for that. And we'll pick up another reference to this face here, I think, and just double check and see if it's the same on both sides, because I don't think I wrote that down. No, I only did one. Oh, no, I did. I'm sorry, I already have that. Okay, I thought I didn't do that. And yeah, it is. So if you look here, I know it's a horrible drawing, but I picked it up to these spots right here, which again are those muffler. There's a big bushing rubber damper that goes in here, and the mufflers hang from there, which of course this has a 4 and a 1. 3 and a 1? Yeah, 4 and a 1. Well, the garbage just came. Pick up the recycling finally. Sorry about that if you hear it. Yeah, it's on the far side, or the driver's side, the left side. It's 1 3/4 offset, and it's only 1.5 over here. So this swing arm, this face here on this outside, so where the sprocket side is, so that would be where a bushing would go. That would, well, bushings on the inside, but it would help. It would essentially line up the rear wheel. Is let's see, it's a 1/4 inch difference, so it's a 1/4 inch this way, and that kind of jives with when this is set up. It wants to go that way for everything to line up, but we're going to check that separately. But I thought I didn't make that measurement. I guess I did. I'm sorry. So now we have a reference as to length rather, from here to here. So now what I'm going to do, just for shits and giggles, is I'm going to pick up a dimension from the center of where the lower part of the shock goes to the upper, while this is level. Just to see what it is, we'll write that down, and then see when this thing is level, where that falls on these on this swing arm. We're not worried about this one, but we're more concerned about here and here. So let's just go ahead and measure it anyway. May need it, may not. Kind of eye in the center. I'd say 11 5/16. We'll write that down, and then we'll take this out again, and we'll put this in again, and then we'll see where it's at on this one when it's level. Zero bubble. I was watching Run Silent, Run Deep the other night. That's a great movie. Old movie, 1958. And what did I watch last night? I watched another submarine movie. Destination Tokyo. Apropos here, since Japanese. Okay, never mind. So we're zero bubble. Now what we're going to do is going to take a measurement and see where that falls. Let me get a marking device here. Holy cow, I actually found one. I only got 18 of them, and I can never find them. Now we want to see where 17 3/4 falls on this swing arm here, which is right there. You see where that is? Wow, look at that. See how much longer that is? That's what she said. So this is the spot on the swing arm that we're dealing with now, our funny little aluminum one. That would be the center line if we were utilizing the original dimensions on everything. So that gives us a 1-to-1 reference here. We know that the other one was level pretty much. We know that this one is level pretty much. And so now, what were we going to do? I forgot. Okay, we're going to do this. As you probably suspected, because the original swing arm isn't really that much more angled down, the dimension with this one leveled, and I have the original dimensions of it right here, which was with it with the shocks installed on the original swing arm. I measured it out at 17 3/4, which is what I just measured it straight across. Well, very close to it at least. So that tells me is, it's a little bit different, but very, very close. So that tells me is that, when I have both of these frames with the top edge here, which is our edge of importance because that's where we have to mount that block for the shocks. If we do the same 11 5/16, it should be the same because it may not be the same because there's a difference in thickness of the actual frame, or not the frame, but the swing arm. But what I'm not taking into consideration is on this swing arm, these are up higher than the surface that we leveled from. You see what I mean? So this surface here, all right, is These are higher than that. So it would almost be the same as if this would be the center line of these holes. In other words, the aluminum here. If you understand where I'm going with that, because my real concern here was the difference in the thickness. Where is that going to play as far as everything's going to fall? So if I go right to the top here and I go 11 and 5/16, we are just a little bit below that when it's level. 11 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, but just a little bit. So in other words, we're high slightly. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the center line of the original swing arm in the level position is 11 and 5/16. The top edge of this swing arm in that same position is pretty much the same thing, 11 and 5/16. Now, of course, we need this to be well above the top edge because I have to machine those blocks. They're going to go somewhere in here. And, of course, the eye is going to be well above it. So, again, that is the question. Where do we put it? Where do we put that to achieve the objective that we want to achieve? All right. So I think one way we can test that is if we take the shock and put it back in somewhat, just kind of get an eyeball as to where it would be and mark that. Now I am pretty well lined up to it right there. So in other words, I'm on the center here and I'm lined up to the bottom edge, of course, but what we're going to do is we're going to make a mark transferred up to here. All right, so that's essentially where that's falling if you go this way with it. Now, lower it back down, get it out of the way. Now we take this. This is, remember, only about 10 millimeters shorter than the ones that we're getting coming in. Put it here and go right there. All right, so if we go right there, where's that going to be in regards to the height of the swing arm relative to a known spot that we measured earlier from the frame, which I do have a measurement of. So let's check that. Now last time I had my level right here, and I turned it sideways, sat it up against this cross member here, and I measured down from this edge. And that is directly above the original swing arms, approximately the center, as far as the axle location goes, right? Trouble is, of course, as you know, that other swing arm is way over here. So it's not going to be a terribly good reference. But if I go here, I kind of have the same problem. And I can push it up against a flat so it's not cattywampus this way. It's part of the, I think that's the seat latch mechanism. But it should be fairly perpendicular with the frame. And then measured down to here. So I think this is a little bit more accurate because this little angle here is not going to cause us a whole lot of grief as far as changes, but way over here compared to the newer one will. And of course this will be a perfect spot to measure the other one. So I'm just going to pick up a dimension from the center, approximately the center this way, and this way, of where the axle would go inside the back of this swing arm. Kind of eye that in. And then we'll kind of eye it in here because I don't have another hand to put a straight edge. And we'll call that 19 and a quarter. About 19 and a quarter to the center. When it's in its nominal position. And as you notice, I put the original one back in because I don't really have a good accurate measurement, but now I do. So we'll say 19 and a quarter from that spot to the center of this one. Let's see where 19 and a quarter puts us relative to that mark we made, where the shock may fall as far as that, where they're going to mount the block. When that one is at 19 and a quarter, maybe plus a little bit. The replacement swing arm is in, and I picked up about the center line of that approximately. So now, basically, we have the same distance between a fixed reference on the frame to the center line of both swing arms. Of course, that one's up here and that one's back here. But essentially, you're talking about the same level or the same height. Close, within an eighth maybe or so of each other. Now we're going to figure out is where the shock falls, original shock, again, in relationship to that mark. As you can see, that is going to work out almost right where we think it's going to be. About back right here, which is where I kind of figured it would be, just by eye. If we put it there, it's too close to the swing arm. If we were going to maintain that exact same height. So if we were going to extend it a little bit, move this down, let's say 1/4 inch, then we could hit that spot pretty close. Maybe right about here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to probably go with these dimensions because I know we have the height that we pretty much have. We're duplicating the height at least on the original one compared to this. So we're picking up the same reference where the rear wheel is going to go, the center line of the rear wheel, to a fixed reference on the frame. This is where I couldn't quite figure it out before, but doing a leveling to get a starting point and then making some measurements from there and then transferring them over to here kind of helped me get my head wrapped around this. We're going to end up having the new shocks leaning a little bit more, which is what I want, about right there. Now, I'm not going to know that for sure until we get them. And I don't know when that's going to happen because those Hagans, I guess, are made over in the UK. We're going to put another mark here and figure that's about where it's going to go on both sides. Now, we do have the chain guard from that Suzuki over there. I'm not sure how that's going to work out yet, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. But I think that's going to work out right about there. And let me show you something else as well. I'm scrapping this idea as far as putting these on, to put these in place. I think that's a dumb idea. And the reason is I'm going to make a block that actually comes off the side here a little bit and wraps around it. So we're going to have a block of aluminum that drops down the side, and I'll mill that so it'll accommodate that. So you can push it up against there and get a reference this way. So I could slide it back and forth here and not lose this reference. And so it'll be wide enough to capture both sides of this and have enough material behind it for an M10 thread. So we don't have to put a nut or nothing behind it. Plenty of material. And what that'll do for us is I'm having trouble figuring out how I'm going to locate those so the welder can do it, because I can't clamp them, and then he's going to have to take them off and prep the surface the way he normally does, and so we need to pick that up again. So my solution to that is going to be, if you can kind of indulge me in your mind here, with a block of aluminum, I'll have to do some sort of a relief, like in other words, that front edge will be angled down this way to clear the body of the shock on the front edge. But when this thing is in place and I mill a slot directly underneath here, when I locate this, I'm going to drill a hole not in here, I'm going to drill a hole in the block and through into the swing arm, and then put a pin on the bottom of that block. Even an aluminum pin will be fine. To locate it, it can't do this because it's running up against this side, and so all it can do is go back and forth. So he slides it back in place, pops it back in with the pin that's already in the block, and it's in the exact spot he needs it to weld it. And I'm going to have the holes pre-drilled and tapped because I need to do that before I send it up to him, and that way I know everything's square, because I'll do that on the mill as well. So I think that's going to work. I really like the look of that. If figure it's the a little bit longer shock, maybe about right there, that angle. I think the shock operation will be good with a longer swing arm. We know that the height will be good because we're duplicating the height basically, plus a little bit of the original axle to a known frame reference dimension, with it unsprung, of course, unloaded, I should say. Well, I think that's going to work out pretty well, but I just couldn't quite figure out how I could verify this. And I think this is the way to do it, by just leveling everything and using it as a reference. So yeah, now what I can do is just measure and see how big I want to make the block, and I can actually start milling it. You know, I'll cut a hunk off of that square 2-inch I got, and then fly cut it square. You know, clean up the edges, and then I can mill the relief, the bottom of it, so part of it falls down here, maybe a 1/4 inch stick out, and then it'll be good. I think that'll work. All right, so this is what I have in mind. Now, I wish I had a ball nose, you know, a ball mill. Unfortunately, I don't. I bought one that's got a 20 thousandths radius, though, so it's not a really sharp edge in there. I don't think it's going to make a whole hill of beads a difference. There's only a tiny, tiny little spot there, and it's going to get welded up. I'm going to have them weld all around this, all right, so all 4 sides. So this is essentially, you get an idea where I'm going with this. So this will reference this edge like that, and I'll eventually, when I get the new shocks, I'll mill out the slot for it. This is going to be considerably shorter too, and I have to clean up the sides yet. I haven't done all the sides rather with the fly cutter yet, but this is going to get cut down to height. So essentially, it'll be more like this. That's kind of hard to show you. Let's do it this way. It's going to be more like this, with most likely cut down at an angle in the front here for the relief on the front of the shock. So it'll be essentially a big slot that to go through at the appropriate height, which I haven't determined yet, and then you know, we'll take it from there. Clearly, this is way too tall. Just going to get whacked down to about here, and then again brought down like that, and then it'll be a slot. It'll go in. We'll put the clearance hole, slight clearance hole for 10 mil, and then do the tap hole on the backside for 10 millimeter 125 pitch. I don't know what bolt we're going to use yet. It's probably not it. This is just for mock-up, but gives you an idea where I'm going with this. I think this is going to be a hell of a lot better strength-wise and alignment-wise. So once I have a slot milled in there, so if you can kind of, you know, pretend that's what's there. So I'll show you what I mean by using a marker. Do something like this. So that'll be your slot that the you know, the relief, the spot that would go into. This is going to be considerably lower, of course. Cut down. That means this is probably deeper as well. I don't know yet, but down through here and about here on the side, we'll drill a hole down through so it penetrates through here. It'll be in the middle of that slot, and then I'll put a pin in that. It'll be in the bottom here, and then a hole will be here, of course, because I'm going to drill straight through. That'll line it up this way. So this will capture it this way, this will capture it that way, and I know when it goes to the welder, all he's got to do is clamp it in place, do his magic, and it's done. But that's essentially what I'm thinking about doing. I think it's going to be a lot better, a lot stronger, and a lot easier to try to get this pinned out or lined up, so when it goes to the welder, he's going to be able to get it in the right place. But again, naturally, this is way, way oversized right now, height-wise, and I got to finish up the edges, or the sides rather, with the fly cutter to clean them up, and then do that slot. But I got to wait for these Hagen shocks to come in, because I'm not 100% sure of this width right here of the eye, so I need that. And then we'll utilize them to make sure that we have this slot placed in the right place this way. And I still have to work on up here, that left to right here, okay, the left to right of thrust, which I'm pretty sure is going to be closer to this side. I still have to turn spacers, which is one of these. So I'm going to be making a wider one. I don't know the width yet. I'll make those spacers, And on this side it is a spacer, but it's more like a, to kind of cap that end off, because that's how I'm going to seal this, by putting an O-ring groove in those. So you'll have one there, one there, one there, and one there. So 4 of those I got to make. And whatever the dimension turns out between the 2 ones on the inside, that's where I'll make that piece that goes through. So it'll transmit that force, that linear force, when this is bolted down through the spacers the way it's supposed to be, and not, you know, crushing this inwards as far as the frame goes. So I still have to do those, but lining this part up is essential to do that before, so I can measure those off and make the spacers. I think that's going to work out just fine. As long as the center line is good, and we can, you know, make spacers for the wheel to line it up eventually to the engine and the sprocket, then, you know, as long as we have a range there, we're good. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so consider yourself updated, guys. That's where we're at on this custom swing arm project, which is a ginormous amount of work, as you can tell from what we're doing so far. But I'm going to try to make it right. I mean, I'm going to make it right, best as my abilities allow. And we'll get these other block machined, set it aside. When we get these Hagen shocks in, I can realign everything and really come up with a final layout to where the shocks are going to go to mill those slots. And then I still got to make all these spacers up in here. I haven't even started those yet because I don't know how wide they need to be. So at that point, we'll make some measurements. I'll start making those aluminum spacers. That'll be with the same material that I was turning today to make the temporary bushings in the original swing arm. Like I said, I had to bush it up to put it back on and make some additional measurements. And you know, he asked me to take the bearings out a while ago, so it is what it is. Speaking it is what it is, don't forget to tune in for future episodes. Subscribe, like, ring the bell. You get notified when I put anything up on the channel. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching as usual, guys. And always remember, don't just repair, restore. Catch you on the next one.